Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of the Sin Bin podcast here on the 27th of January. Always on the Sports Fluent Network. Go check it out, sportsfluent.com. A lot of great content and a lot of great creators on there. I'm Joe Trentley, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He's Mitch Bannon, Toronto, Ontario. And we got a lot to get to today. Conference championship weekend has passed. There's a lot of updates and rumors with a lot of quarterbacks around the league we'll get to. We'll throw some NBA news in there, our surprises. And the MLB free agency frenzy is picking up, especially for Mitch here. But and we'll preview the Super Bowl a little bit. But we got a lot to talk about, so we'll start with the leadoff. I'm going to let Mitch get to his leadoff first, and then I'll go after him.
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who don't know, what I'm doing right now is I work in content for the Toronto Six, which is the newest professional women's hockey team in North America. And right now they're playing in what they call it the N double, because the NWHL is in a bubble in Lake Placid, not Salt Lake, playing at the Herb Brooks Arena from the Miracle on Ice. And the Toronto Six got their first ever win yesterday. Friend of the show, I guess I'll say, Lindsay Eastwood scored the first goal in franchise history. It's super easy. You can watch it on Twitch, and it's great because it's on throughout the day. So if you need your hockey fix, it's fast and fun hockey. So check it out.
Yeah, our good friend Lindsay Eastwood there, watching the highlight of that, Mitch, kind of just being in the right spot at the right time. She fed it around the net, and the puck trickled through in the front of the net, and she put it in with the forehand. So big shout out there to our pal, Lindsay Eastwood, on the show. But I just want to use my minute to state the fact that I was down $65 on Saturday. Thank you, Conor McGregor, and the rest of the UFC fights. I probably lost about 60 on Conor alone, and then I ran a 4-fight parlay. Trusted two of my good pals who are twins and watch the UFC pretty religiously, and didn't work out. I went 2 for 4 in the parlay, Mitch. So lost about $65 total dollars on Saturday from the UFC fights. But regardless, congratulations to Dustin Poirier on a great fight, knocking Conor out in the second round TKO. So we'll see what happens next with Conor and the UFC. But we're going to get to the show now, move on here to football. It was conference championship weekend, NFC and AFC. And Mitch, we are going to start with the NFC. The inevitable, I was hoping it, we kind of, in the back of our minds, thought that it was going to happen because it always somehow ends up
inevitable.
It's inevitable. Tom Brady and the Bucs go up to Lambeau and take care of business, beating Aaron Rodgers and the Packers 31-26. Brady advancing to his 10th overall Super Bowl. That's clearly the most by any player in NFL history. And the Bucs advancing to their first Super Bowl appearance since 2002, which they won. Technically, it was the 2003 Super Bowl, but 2002 season, which they won over the Raiders. So big news there in Tampa Bay. The storylines really – now, Aaron Rodgers 1-3 in conference championship games. And the whole argument was, well, he never got a home conference championship game at Lambeau. Like they always had to go on the road and play in conference championship games. And they thought, well, if we get the frozen tundra on our turf in January, it's going to be a huge advantage for us. And the Bucs kind of shut them down. Rodgers played well. I think he threw for about 346 and a few touchdowns, 1 pick. And Tom Brady threw 3 interceptions, Mitch. Not very, whenever – it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Whenever your quarterback throws 3 interceptions in a game, it's very unlikely that you'll end up winning the football game. That's 3 turnovers, giving the ball back to the opposing team, and especially an opposing team with Aaron Rodgers at the helm.
Yeah, I didn't expect – if you told me at the beginning of the game that Brady was going to throw 3 picks and Rodgers was going to throw 3 touchdowns and 1 pick, I don't see how the outcome was what it was. Like, it just from a quarterback perspective, Rodgers basically did everything he could, and Brady gave the Packers multiple times chances to win. Like, they got timely interceptions when they needed them, and they still didn't turn it into a victory. Obviously, I think the ending was the most controversial part of the game. Matt LaFleur deciding to kick the field goal and turn a one-touchdown game into a one-touchdown game. I was in a group chat with some people messaging being like, it's not even, you often have the discussion, should you go for it, should you kick? We were trying to have the discussion, like, none of us could play the devil's advocate on why you would kick. We were trying to figure out why anyone would do that play. Like, they just put themselves in the exact same situation they were going to need to be had they gone for it on fourth down and missed. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
I agree with you, Mitch. I think his thinking was, well, if you kick the field goal, it makes it a one-possession game, and you have 4 timeouts essentially. You have the 2-minute warning because it was on the other half of the 2-minute warning, and you have all 3 timeouts. But the problem is you have Tom Brady on the other sideline. That's where I agree with you. I just don't see a reason. If I'm Matt LaFleur, it shows a lot of trust and confidence that he has in his defense to be able to go out there and get 3 stops. But it's not like the Bucs backfield is shabby. Playoff Lenny Fournette has been wheeling and dealing these playoffs, and Ronald Jones back there as well. It's not like they can't run the football. So, and when you have Tom Brady at the helm, I just don't see. You have Aaron Rodgers. The man can create plays arguably better than anybody in the NFL, with the exception of Pat Mahomes, out of nothing. I've seen the things I've seen Aaron. I already said Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback I've seen personally in my lifetime as far as ability, like strictly ability is in account. And what was it? A 4th and
would have been about 9, I think.
9.
Yeah,
It's cake for Aaron Rodgers. I mean, again, you're in the red zone. The game on the line. You don't want to give Tom Brady the football back. And I understand, his thinking, well, we have 4 timeouts essentially and this and that. If you go for it, you have 4 timeouts regardless if you don't get it. I understand if you kick the field goal, it makes a one-possession game, but, this argument wouldn't be really talked about if Mason Crosby misses that field goal. I mean, it would be like kicking the field goal. Okay, well, why would you do that? But at the same time, then you're in the same situation. Like, you could have either kicked the field goal and gotten the 3 points or gone for it on fourth down and not get it. It's the same outcome if he misses. So there's a lot of controversy to this. And then, the other controversy, the flag, the pass interference.
Yeah.
They called. And a lot of people livid about that because anybody that watched the game, the refs held the flags in their pockets basically the entire game. I remember Joe Buck stating that there weren't any penalties, I don't think, in the first half of the entire game. I think it was the third quarter until the first penalty. I could be wrong, but I know it was at least in the second, late in the second, early in the third, that he stated that. So, and I understand the refs want to let these players play, especially with the trip to the Super Bowl on the line, which we all like to see. And the pass interference call, yeah, you could see the grab of the jersey, but Packers fans will argue, well, what about the other 3 plays that they held their flags in their pockets for with clear defensive holding or pass interference? It's just timely. I think a lot of people, are stating, well, of course, because it's Tom Brady, and it was a third down play. Rodgers would have gotten the ball back. A lot of controversy about it.
I think the most interesting part for me is how late the flag was.
Yes,
I watched it back. I went back on my screen and counted 7 seconds between the play and the flag. Like, that is one of the latest flags I've ever seen. That's not like the refs coming together and deciding to throw a flag. This was 7 seconds after the play. The ref who should have made the call, if he was going to make the call in the first place, deciding to make it. It's funny because we forget about that play because all the discussion post game was about why did he kick, but that was a pretty wild flag that if there was no other controversy at the end of this game, I think we would be talking about it a lot more.
And another conversation is, well, if it's Tom Brady and that flag was thrown that late, you could hear the Bucs arguing they wanted the call. And you could hear the fans, cheering like, oh, there wasn't a call. And then 7 seconds later, bam. It would have been a completely different story if the ref would have thrown the flag right away.
Mm-hmm.
He sees the hold pass interference and he throws the flag right away. Then it's like, okay, he made up his mind. He saw what he saw. There's nobody from the outside, like no outside source telling him, oh my Lord, like you have to throw the flag. Like no pressure on him. He sees it. He makes the call. But you count him at 7 seconds. They're essentially bringing the ball back to the line of scrimmage to snap the ball. And that would have been a 4th down. Again, the Bucs would have punted. Rodgers would have got the football back. Again, regardless, Brady goes to his 10th Super Bowl. Bucs go up to the frozen tundra and get the win. I think on, big day for Chris Godwin. I think the most impressive player on that entire Bucs team that I've seen is Devin White.
Oh, he's so good.
The more and more I watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that man is everywhere. He is everywhere. It doesn't matter. Any defensive snap that he's on the field, if he's not making the full tackle, he's getting a half tackle. If he's not making any kind of tackle, he's around the football. Or he's picking up a loose fumble, or he's getting an interception, or he's blocking a pass at the line of scrimmage. He does everything. He does it all. He just has a knack for the football. He's a gritty linebacker, and he's smart. And he's a big physical guy. That's what you want on your football team. And he's going to be a big reason why the Super Bowl, I think, is going to be a very competitive Super Bowl. And he's going to need to really play like he's been playing to help stop the Chiefs and Pat Mahomes. Also, Murphy Bunting, 3 interceptions in 2 playoff games. Well, they've played 3, but I believe it was the last 2. He has 3 interceptions. So the Tampa Bay secondary, depleted secondary too, coming up big. But Brady moves on to his 10th. The Bucs move on to their first since 2002, which they won, and now they get to host the Super Bowl. So we'll see how that goes. But who will they play? None other than Pat Mahomes.
I could have told you this, 17 months ago?
Yeah, preseason, I picked the Chiefs again to repeat. I didn't see they didn't lose anybody. If anything, they signed more guys. So Chiefs defeat the Bills 38-24 at Arrowhead to move to their second consecutive Super Bowl. They won last year, Andy Reid getting his first. It took a lot of grit and a lot of, a close game against the Browns to get to the AFC title game. And then Bills Mafia invades Arrowhead Stadium, seeing all the videos.
A lot of blue, yeah.
A lot of blue, yeah. When they first did that panorama of Arrowhead to set the scene, Mitch, I saw arguably more blue than I saw red.
Yeah, and that's not like a close trip either. The Bills do have kind of like national fans and even international fans, but that's a lot of people traveling from Buffalo to get a chance to see their team.
Yeah, Kansas City in the middle of the country, and Bills Mafia making the trip down. But really, the storyline, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Who else would you expect? Hill went for 9 receptions, 172 yards, and Kelce had 13 for 118 and 2 touchdowns. 13 receptions for Travis Kelce, the most of any player in any conference championship game in the history of the NFL. What more can you say about these two? Arguably the 2 best weapons. You could argue. I made the argument that Travis Kelce is the best tight end in football. Some people would say George Kittle. But I think Kelce is the best. And there's people now saying that Tyreek Hill's in the conversation for best receiver in the NFL.
It's funny. You saw that graphic before the game. That's like, it obviously made the rounds after the game where it's like, oh, advantage Chiefs for coaching. And then it had advantage Bills for quarterback play. We can discuss that later. No offense to Josh Allen. But then it also had advantage Bills for, they called it, I think, number 1 wide receiver. So I thought was a very specific verbiage to avoid having to put Travis Kelce in that conversation, because you can't. Kelce and Hill are both elite pass catchers, but they're also so perfect to play together. All you have to do with Hill every single play put him on the outside, have him run a straight line. And then Kelsey can do all the work on the inside, and they just complement each other so well.
And, when you put Hill on the outside, that 99% of the time draws one of the safeties over, so you can game plan and throw Kelsey where that missing safety is going to be. There's just so many different schemes, and Andy Reid is the perfect coach to do that. He's a great offensive mind. He's a genius. He knows how to use these guys, and he knows what schemes to use. And that goes to show. And they obviously have the quarterback to do that and get them the football. But that's just going to be a tough task for Tampa Bay. People, whenever you play the Chiefs, you have to game plan for Pat Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce. But there's so many other, McCole Hardman is he's forming into a nice complementary wide receiver. When Sammy Watkins is on the field as well, when healthy, and their backfield with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that's confusing to me. They drafted him, and everybody thought, oh my Lord, like the Chiefs offense is going to be absolutely insane. If there was really a question mark, it was at the running back position. And they went out and they got a stud running back coming out of the draft. But we really haven't seen him much this season due to injuries or just playing time in general. And the Chiefs offense is just doing what the Chiefs offense does. And their defense holding Josh Allen in that offense to 24 points. And
a bunch of those points didn't even come from the offense. The best part of the game was when McCole Hardman botched that punt at the beginning of the game, and everyone's like, oh, Bills up. I think they went up 9-0. I think they might have missed the extra point. But it's kind of interesting. Spotting the Bills, that 9-point lead, I think made the game a little more interesting than it would have been had the Chiefs just got out to the lead they eventually got out to.
Yeah, I think, and if we mentioned the Chiefs and talked about them, but if there's a storyline for the Bills here, Bills Mafia, you're in good hands. This team is going to be very good for a long, long time. You have the stud quarterback. You have the defense. You have the head coach. You have a stud wide receiver. All they're really missing is run. Todd McShay released his first mock draft, and he had the Bills taking Najee Harris at 30.
Wow. That'd be
first running back. Yeah, he had them taking Najee Harris, first running back off the board at 30. And imagine if the Bills get Najee Harris, there's a bunch of different things they can do and use him for. But Bills Mafia, you're in good hands. The Bills are going to be around in the AFC for a long, long time. The only problem is Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to be around.
We're right there with you, yeah.
just as much of a long, long time. I think, looking forward, these two teams can really control the AFC. Baltimore is also a very young team. But when you look at if the Bills continue to play like they have this season, the only team I can see stopping them really is the Chiefs. The Titans are a nice team. I just don't think their defense is there. Like I said, Baltimore's a complete team. Indianapolis is a quarterback away from contending for a Super Bowl, in my opinion, and we'll get to that in our next discussion. But I think these two teams that we saw in the AFC Championship, they were the number 1 and 2 seeds for a reason. Mm-hmm. And I think going forward, it's hard to say that these two teams aren't going to be the best two teams in the AFC for quite some time to come.
Football, it feels like more than any other sport, that number 1 regular season seed and that number 2 regular season seed are always there at the end of the playoffs. Obviously, sometimes you get the upsets like those wild card Giants teams, and it feels like the Ravens, whenever they're a wild card, always kind of make a bit of a run. But betting against the number 1 seed, especially in a format where they're the only team that gets a bye, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, you're just at such an advantage getting that extra week of rest, the extra week to game plan. And then also you are on paper likely the best team in your conference.
And that's another discussion going forward. Does the NFL format stay the same? Does it change? Next season, are there going to be fans? We don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19 and the pandemic and what, the protocols will be, if anything changes by September. We don't know. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep the format, if they allow that extra playoff team in, but then it hurts it hurts the second seed really, because historically they'd be getting a first round bye as well. And
you basically have to win 14 games to enjoy yourself a bye. It's crazy.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there going forward. Regardless, the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay hosting it, there was a lot of people, laughing at the beginning of the playoffs saying, well, if Tom gets them there, they host the Super Bowl in their own stadium, this and that. And they welcome who else but the defending Super Bowl champs, Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, and Tyreek Hill to town. Should be a good one in 2 weeks. We'll preview that a little bit at the end of the show, but we got a Super Bowl special episode for you guys next week coming up with some possible special guests. So that should be fun. But now staying in the NFL, Mitch, a lot of free agents or guys who could be on the move, not necessarily free agents, but that could possibly opt out and want to go somewhere else. Among those names, we'll start with probably the biggest one, Deshaun Watson. Not happy with Houston, not happy with the Texans organization. He clearly wants out. He's made every single possible statement or move to say that he wants out of Houston, and he's not happy there. And his top two possible landing spots, both in the AFC East, Miami and New York. Where do you think Watson could possibly end up? And are there any teams on there that I did not mention out of those two that are a surprise contender to get him?
I think the only other team I would throw in is the 49ers, because I think we're going to probably talk about them as a good fit for maybe some of the other quarterbacks in play. And they don't necessarily have the draft capital of the Jets and Miami, which is why they're probably the two most likely spots. But I think they've proven that they're willing to go out and pay for the quarterback, both in money and in assets. And so if the market kind of dies down, I could see them making a run. But I think it's pretty obvious that if the Jets want Deshaun, they can get him. It's just a question of, I think everyone's making too big of a deal of where Deshaun wants to go. He doesn't have a no trade clause. This is him asking for a trade. So if he truly wants out, he's going to accept whatever trade Houston makes. So it's less about what he wants and more about what team is willing to pay the most for him. And if Houston is going to trade him, they're just going to take the best offer.
Which you could argue the Jets have as far as draft picks go. This year they have the second overall pick. Could very well see that swap, possibly with another complimentary player or not for Houston. And it could work out for both sides. You figure Watson's not happy there. You understand his value. He's only 25 years old. And you throw him on a New York Jets team with a new head coach. He could be happy there, and you could get the number 2 overall pick. And you could essentially just pick another quarterback that isn't named Trevor Lawrence in this draft, whichever one that you want, and start over. So we could see that. Miami was rumored at the beginning of this whole frenzy with Deshaun Watson to be the favorite. He said he would enjoy going to Miami. Miami's a very good complementary team. They have a great defense, great secondary, arguably the best secondary in football. And they have some good offensive weapons in Devontae Parker and Mike Gesicki, forming into a nice kind of Travis Kelce and Gronk mix, in my opinion. But we'll see. I don't know. Another team that I wouldn't see it because they're in the same division would be the Colts. I think he'd be a perfect fit in Indianapolis because I think any quarterback that ends up in Indianapolis they're going to succeed right away. That team is, like I've said in previous shows, one of the most well-balanced teams in football. They have a tremendous defense. They have great receivers. They have one of the best running games in the league, and they have a fantastic offensive line. I don't know what more, they even have a young kicker. I don't know what more, and Frank Reich at the helm, I don't know what more you could want as a quarterback heading into a good situation. But like you said, there's no trade clause, so he basically has to go wherever Houston chooses for him to go, and I highly doubt that they would want to trade him inside the division. I think that's why the Colts aren't getting talked about a lot, but we'll see where Deshaun Watson ends up. There's a handful of teams. You mentioned the 49ers, the Dolphins, the Jets. We'll see. But another big name, Matthew Stafford, parting ways with the Detroit Lions. Now, this is another interesting one. He's going to be on the move and go somewhere. There's a lot of teams that would like him. The teams that we just mentioned, 49ers, Colts. Your pick, Mitch.
Yeah, I
Saints.
think you were mentioning how good of a fit the Colts were for Deshaun, and I think it seems almost inevitable that Stafford ends up with the Colts. I could see once again the 49ers making a strong play, but he seems so perfect for that team. I just imagine Matthew Stafford throwing to T.Y. Hilton. Hilton's had to really adjust his game to Rivers this year, and he didn't have a great season until closer to the end. But Stafford Hilton is perfect. You couldn't draw that matchup up better. And then I don't think Matthew Stafford has ever had a run game as strong as he would have joining that offensive line and that running back room in Indianapolis. I think it would be great. And what you want to do with a guy like Stafford, who is old but not quarterback old, is don't expect him to be the guy. Like obviously you want your quarterback to be the guy, but they have so many weapons they can surround him with. You bring him in, maybe draft a wide receiver, but you probably don't have your first round pick if you're trading for him. I think Stafford to the Colts is a perfect fit and would, as you said, immediately make them probably comparable to the Titans, I'd say, as that third or fourth best team in the AFC.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree with you. I just think the Colts, if they get a quarterback there, I'm high on the Colts. Um, Philip Rivers was, a great veteran leader, tons of experience, but he father time only gets the best of these guys, and this crop of Rivers, Breeze, Roethlisberger, Brady, it's getting there. Father time's catching up, and we're seeing the end of it. And Rivers announcing his retirement. And I think he was on a 1-year contract, so I think it worked out. He went to the playoffs. They lost a nail biter in Buffalo, but now it's the Colts' turn to look for another quarterback. And even if the Colts wouldn't get a quarterback, which I think they absolutely will, Jacoby Brissett can still go out with that team and win you 7 to 8 games. So regardless, Colts fans, you're in a good scenario. They're going to be competitive this year no matter what. Um, Stafford's just another big name. We don't know where he's going to end up. A lot of people, the Saints are in conversations because they don't know what they're going to do. Drew Brees is likely to retire. But again, we don't know. He hasn't said anything yet. 49ers are a big destination. If they get their players back healthy, that is. Um,
I think we all forget how injured the 49ers were this year. I think they should and will be on every single person's sleeper list next year. They played most of the year with their backup quarterback. Not that Jimmy was a big part of that team. Kittle missed lots of the year. Their running back room was decimated. Uh, they were a very injured team. Nick Bosa, I don't even know how many games he ended up playing, but that's arguably like 3 of their best 5 players all missed most of the year. I think if I was to pick my sleeper team for next year right now, regardless of what they do at quarterback, it's the 49ers.
and we'll talk about 2 more names here, Mitch, really quick. Aaron Rodgers. There's now rumors circulating saying, well, he's going to get out of Green Bay, which I find it hard to believe. That's just me. He's set up there. He has arguably the best receiver in football, who he has tremendous chemistry with. Some could say it's the best 1-2 punch in football as far as quarterback receiver goes. He has great weapons. Other than Robert Tonyan developed into a very nice receiving tight end this year. Valdez Scantling's good. Lazard's good. You know, he has those 3 running backs, but people say Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams aren't coming back. Still has AJ Dillon. Has a great offensive line, especially once they get Bakhtiari back next season. Defense is good. And he's been there his entire career. I mean, I don't see, he has 3 years left on his contract. I don't see him getting out of Green Bay. That's just me personally. I think he's there. I think these rumors are circulating because he's frustrated, especially with their draft pick of Jordan Love, when he clearly stated that he wanted another weapon besides Devontae Adams, which I can understand. But the Packers are still good enough, to make it to the Super Bowl. The storyline, like I mentioned earlier, he's 1-3 in conference championship games. I mean, he has 1 Super Bowl under his belt, but people are saying, Aaron Rodgers is, and he's good enough to get to the Super Bowl any year, no matter how, bad his team is or, incompetent his team is. I just don't see him on the move. I don't know about you. If you have any
I
differences.
don't disagree at all. I think you're right. I don't want to put words or thoughts in Aaron Rodgers' mind, but I think this was probably a lot of him putting his thumb on the scale and showing this management group how much power he kind of has in this situation. Rodgers has been in these situations before. He's been on both sides of them. So he kind of knows how it works. And I think he's just kind of reminding Green Bay, hey, if I want out, I can be out. Like if I want to trade, I can make that happen. Remember what you have here with me. Like I am, as you mentioned, arguably the most talented quarterback to ever play. Don't forget that.
Yeah, and you're guaranteed when you have Aaron Rodgers at the helm, you're basically guaranteed a playoff spot. So, with a historic organization like the Packers, Lambeau Field, the tradition, the history, especially of quarterbacks there, I think maybe now management will listen and possibly draft a guy that Aaron Rodgers wants, or at least he will be in the room saying, "I want this guy. Go draft me this guy."
Do you think
And
there's
maybe
Aaron Rodgers draft board? It's like
yeah,
LaFleur's draft board, Rodgers draft board, and then
yeah,
our composite draft board.
yeah. Rodgers draft board that includes every receiver in the draft, known to
It's
man
only wide receivers.
that he wants, and maybe throw in a running back.
Yeah. Late
In
sixth
there.
round pick, we can take a back.
Yeah, sixth round pick. We can take a guy running back, but I just don't see Rodgers on the move. Neither does Mitch. One last quarterback here we'll talk about, which is very interesting with the scenario that we just brought up a few minutes ago. Sam Darnold just kind of sitting there with the Jets, questioning, is this going to be my team? Am I going to be on the move? If I'm Sam Darnold, I don't know who I'm playing for next season.
Yeah.
If you look at it, the Jets are right now, I believe, the number one contender to get Deshaun Watson. If that happens, there's no reason for them to keep Sam Darnold. I think it's a win-win for the Jets and Sam Darnold. If you get Deshaun Watson, that means Sam Darnold's gone. That means Sam Darnold can go to another team and basically start over. He's not a bad quarterback. I don't care what people say. Sam Darnold is not a bad quarterback. And I think if you give him a chance on another team that isn't a dumpster fire of a team, Sam Darnold has some more success than he would with the New York Jets. And I think the Jets obviously would be better off with Deshaun Watson at the helm. But if you're the Jets and you get Deshaun Watson, you're going to have to give up your second overall pick. That's just pretty much etched in stone. But if you get rid of Sam Darnold to a team that needs a quarterback, I'm not saying you're going to get the second overall pick or something that valuable, but you're going to get some value back. So it's kind of like, you make a trade, you give up to get something. You give up a lot to get something, like something big in return, but then you're giving up something big to get some stuff back in return. So It's kind of a win-win for the Jets are in the driver's seat right now.
That's an unfamiliar situation for them.
Yeah. As far as like a package that they want to offer to Houston, maybe Houston wants Sam Darnold. Maybe they say, we're not going to draft. We don't need your second pick. Maybe we want your second pick and Sam Darnold, but we're not going to take a quarterback with the second pick.
I think it's interesting because I feel like if Houston wanted Darnold, we would know by now. Like those talks would be happening. If they had legit interest in Darnold, those talks would be happening very quickly. They would be easy because then it's, okay, the question is just how many first-round picks are we sending with Darnold? I think we kind of talked about those teams, the Colts, 49ers, Jets, and then a few other maybe quarterback needy teams that are going to play a little bit of a game this offseason and see who lands sitting in what chair and which quarterback lands where. And then Sam Darnold will go to the team that misses out. If he doesn't get traded in a big deal for Deshaun Watson, he's going to go to the Colts when they strike out on Stafford and maybe Deshaun and whoever else they could be interested in. He'll be that last option, but he also has a lot of upside. So it's not the worst option, but I think he'll kind of be just the backup plan for everyone looking to address quarterback.
I think there's two other sleeper teams too that are in need of a quarterback, in my opinion. Now you look at Carolina, Teddy Bridgewater. Just I understand Carolina's not the best team, but imagine putting a guy like Deshaun Watson and his talent level with Christian McCaffrey. Wow. And Washington, they also they're in need of a quarterback. So those are two.
They could make a lot of sense for Sam.
Yeah.
Take a risk on a guy like that. If it doesn't work, you're still building, draft someone next year.
Mm-hmm. And two guys that we didn't, talk about, I'll just throw in here. We don't have to really touch it. But Dak Prescott with Dallas and where's Carson Wentz going to be? We don't know. There are a lot of quarterbacks on the move. It'll be an interesting offseason here. The draft coming up in April. We'll see what happens, but we'll move on from the NFL here to – I'm going to let Mitch kind of take away this segment because I know he has a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss. So I'll just let him go on his rant. The MLB free agency frenzy going on right now. It feels like it's all the Toronto Blue Jays making all of the moves. I don't know how big of cap they have, but wow, they are making a ton of moves. Sure, Mitch can elevate on that and elaborate on that, and we'll see where he wants to go with this.
Yeah, I'll briefly touch on the Blue Jays at the beginning to address your question. I think the estimation is they probably have spent about 130 million so far in terms of allocated salary for next year. And they topped out in their competitive years in 2016-17 at about 160 million. So they could still feasibly go out and sign a Trevor Bauer. I don't think that's going to happen. But a good thing about all their deals this year, they recently signed Marcus Semien to one, is they've got a lot of one-year deals. So they can load up this year, let their prospects in core develop, because a lot of people forget they have 5 top 100 prospects. They got Austin Martin, who they drafted 5th overall, who's a top 20 prospect in a lot of people's minds. So they can load up, let the youth develop, and then spend again next year, which I think is kind of the most fun part. You got Springer, who's that long-term core player, but then there's going to be a lot of roster turnover next year as well. But JT Realmuto signed with the Phillies, I think was kind of inevitable. It seemed like he was always going to go back to Philadelphia. And then I think the big name that's still out there is Trevor Bauer. I don't know. Did you ever kind of pencil Bauer as a Yankee? I kind of always thought he was going to be a Dodger or a Yankee. I don't know about you.
I saw it, especially with his, his personality, and he's on social media, very active on Twitter, as we know. And I could see it. The Yankees have the money to sign pretty much anybody at any time that they want to. I could see it, but now with the Kluber signing, and they just got Taillon from the Pirates, I think their rotation's pretty much in set. Tanaka's not coming back. So now you look at the rotation, Cole as the ace, throw Kluber or Sevy in there as 2 and 3. Domingo Germán comes back this year from his suspension, and Taillon. That's 5 right there. Jordan Montgomery, they can throw in the bullpen as kind of a stretch reliever, as a long reliever kind of guy. He can come in if you're stuck in like the 3rd or 4th inning and you got to pull your starter. He's your guy that can come in there. They can just move him to the bullpen, which he's done before. They have a lot of options. And that's what I like. I like Brian Cashman being aggressive with this. The need was starting pitching. You look at the past 10 years, the Yankees' issue has never been hitting the ball. It's never been the offense. They're always there in home runs, always there in batting average. They're always there in hits. They're pretty much every offensive category they're pretty much there in. The bullpen for the last 5 to 10 years has been the best in baseball, or if not the best in baseball, arguably the best in baseball. The defense has been completely fine. The issue has always been, the Achilles heel has been starting pitching. I look back ever since the days of the Mike Mussinas and the Roger Clemens, they have not had a great rotation. Yes, they had CC Sabathia. That was their big signing when he came over from Cleveland. And they won the World Series in 2009. But you're the New York Yankees. You're expected to compete for a World Series every single season. And they just have not done that. They haven't even made it to the World Series. They've just gotten bounced by Houston or Detroit back when Verlander was with Detroit, excuse me. They just haven't done that. And I think when you go out, again, we don't know what we're getting with Corey Kluber. Like you mentioned from last season, he barely played. Hopefully he comes back and can be Cy Young Corey Kluber from Cleveland a few years ago. But I think their rotation is competent now. I think if you get Sevy and Domingo back in the mix, they are going to be a very good team. And I think that the Achilles heel at least gets repaired. Not completely fixed, but repaired. And it could maybe be enough to get him over the hump. They traded away Adam Ottavino to the Red Sox yesterday. That was
I
some news.
saw that. I don't know. When I saw that, the first thing I thought is they're clearing money to make another move. I don't think it seemed,
Yep.
reading on Twitter, it made it seem like people didn't really think that was happening, because a lot of teams, the Yankees included, are treating this luxury tax threshold as basically a salary cap now. And so the Yankees, Dodgers, a few other teams are really pushing up against it. And so clearing out, I think it was almost $8 million in Ottavino money. Something's up there, because he had a bad year last year. But if you're the Yankees and you're not doing something else, why not just keep Ottavino?
Yeah.
You need more than 15 good arms to win in a Major League Baseball season. And I think we might find out something. It's not, I thought Tanaka, but it sounds like he's going back to Japan now. So maybe they just kind of get like a $5-6 million other starting pitcher to bring in, because the biggest issue with basically all of those starting pitchers, who I think are all good upside plays, is that they all have, except for Cole, injury histories, and like bad injury histories. And so there's a lot of variance in their starting pitching. It could be the best rotation in baseball, could be one of the bottom five. If you have Kluber pitch 3 starts, Taillon have another Tommy John surgery, you're screwed. So maybe they go out and get like a safe 4th starting pitcher with that money.
Sevy, Tommy John surgery. Montgomery, I believe, had Tommy John surgery. As you said, a lot of injuries there. I think the biggest need, as I said, was starting pitching. But the top priority, which every Yankee fan wanted Cashman to get done, was re-sign DJ LeMahieu. And they did that, and it was a sigh of relief, at least on my end. I was talking to Matt and Darren about this. The days went by and we're like, when's he going to re-sign DJ? Like, just get it done already. I don't know what the debate is. I don't know what the argument is. We just want it done. I don't care.
He was the most obvious Yankee ever. He was never not going to be.
He grew up a Yankees fan.
Yeah, exactly.
The kid's great. He's the best contact hitter in baseball. And I don't know. At least they got it done. And they got him locked up. And that is completely fine by me. He stays in the leadoff spot and the top of that lineup, and you're guaranteed to get him on base at least like 30 to 40% of the time. So that was the biggest priority, but the biggest need was starting pitching. And like you said, I think they're upside guys. Taillon, upside guy. Pittsburgh, he had a rocky, iffy, it was wishy-washy, but players leave Pittsburgh and we know the
regularly.
Yeah. We know the history, what happens to players when they leave the Pirates organization. Garrett Cole, Tyler Glasnow, hopefully now Jameson Taillon. We'll see. But hopefully he pans out. I think it'll be an interesting season. I think it'll be a good season. You touched on the Real Muto re-signing, which I was also going to get to. Phillies re-signed him, which again seemed inevitable. He was a big catching free agent market player that a lot of teams were targeting. But
I think the only other, I'll quickly slide in here at the end, the only other team in free agency that I think no one's kind of thinking about that I want to get on people's radar, I think the San Francisco Giants are having a low-key great offseason. They signed Tommy La Stella reportedly yesterday, who he's kind of been a backup for the last couple of years, but he's kind of a mini DJ LeMahieu type. He's a really good contact hitter. He can play all over the diamond. They brought back Kevin Gausman, who, if you look at like spin rates and a lot of those, even the pretty detailed analytics, they all love Kevin Gausman. I think people see a lot of upside in him. He came back on a 1-year deal. And then they added Drew Smiley, who's a similar kind of guy who's battled injuries, but could be a good SP3, SP4. So no one's thinking about the San Francisco Giants. Wanted to put them on people's radar.
Yep, that's a lot going on here in MLB free agency. Still a lot of time to go. Season creeping up here, but we're gonna move on to the hardcore, the NBA. Some NBA news here. Mitch and I have some NBA updates and some surprises. Really quick, I just want to touch on the 76ers, Philadelphia, leading the Eastern Conference, and no surprise about the Lakers leading the West. But Mitch, the first thing I want to get to here is it's only a matter of time until Brooklyn creeps up and takes over the East.
Yeah, we talked a bit about the Harden trade yesterday, but I think last night was the first night since Harden was acquired by Brooklyn that he didn't hit the over on his assists. And so everyone loves talking about how James Harden is kind of that ball first, shoot first guy, but he is fitting right into that offense. He's averaging like 12 assists a game in Brooklyn. The only thing we mentioned this last week that's going to hold them back is if they kind of implode, but they show no signs of it. They're clicking, they're playing well, they're winning games. The only issue is they went from probably the deepest team we've seen in a long time to very shallow. They barely have 5 starting caliber players that can play at the positions you need. I really like Joe Harris, who's their main kind of bench weapon, but I think I hear rumors of them being interested in Kevin Love. At the very least, probably going to acquire JaVale McGee, but they need that depth. If they go out and get those guys, get JaVale another ring, they just need competent bench players. And I agree. I think they'll be pretty unstoppable by the end of the season.
Fun fact, big JaVale McGee guy right here. I love JaVale McGee. Ever since he was a Washington Wizard, I've loved JaVale McGee. Just the funny he's been on Shaqtin' a Fool like
1,000 times.
5 times. Yeah, but I love JaVale McGee. Great team guy. Big JaVale McGee guy over here. I'd love to see him win another ring. But yeah, like I said, only a matter of time, I think, until the Nets creep up and take over the East. I don't think Philadelphia holds that spot for too long. Again, it's early in the season. We'll get to the surprise teams here. I'm going to go with the bad team first, and I think you know where I'm going with this. The Washington Wizards in dead last. My Wizards dead last, 3-10 on the season. 1-8 in conference play. 1-5 at home. You know, a lot of people said about Russell Westbrook, being a cancer to the team, and Bradley Beal can only do so much. As a fan, I want him to stay because he averages like 30 points a game, and he's the only hope that they have. But as a, being sympathetic for the guy, it's almost like you got to get him out of there. It's kind of like a situation, where they're just wasting the prime years, like a Steelers wasting the Big Ben prime years of what he had left. It's like just get Bradley Beal out of Washington, but I want him to stay because, he's the only hope. They give up like 185,000 points a game. They have no issue scoring. They're always near the top of the league in points per game. They're always going to score. They have no issue with that. It's playing defense that they have an issue with. I don't know if it's a Scott Brooks issue. I don't know if it's, a player issue, an athleticism issue. I don't know what the deal is, but they are a dumpster fire right now. But I'll switch from them to another team, since I won't just talk about the Wizards the entire time. Surprised, the Pelicans. Really surprised. They're second to last in the West. They're 5-10, especially with all that young talent that they have. I have a hard time believing they're not a playoff team right now, Mitch.
Yeah, I think we thought they were going to be fun, but I think face value, fun doesn't win basketball games right now. They got a lot of parts, but it hasn't come together, and they changed a lot in the offseason. You hear Lonzo being floated on the trade market. I think there's a very real chance he's not a Pelican next year. You talk about wasting prime. Zion hasn't kind of reached what we think he can reach, but they got to start putting a team around Zion soon, and they got to find out what that team is. I think they've tried a bunch of different combinations, and just kind of none of them have worked. And Brandon Ingram has developed a new young star, and you still can't make it work. You look at all their individual players, and you're like, this should be a good team, and it's just not.
It's basically a Duke grad school. You look at the roster: Frank Jackson, Jahlil Okafor, Zion, J.J. Redick, Brandon Ingram. Basically, Duke, come play, another X amount of seasons, just minus Coach K. But who'd you have as your surprise bad team?
Yeah, I think my surprise bad team is turned it on a little bit of late, but it's the Raptors. I think I was probably higher than most on the Raptors naturally coming into the season. I thought they would be the 4th, maybe 5th best team in the East, and they're not in the playoffs right now. But I think 6-7 games in, I was all in on the, okay, let's tank. Let's go get Cade Cunningham. Let's be real bad. Trade Kyle Lowry for a couple picks. Love Kyle Lowry, but if they were going to be really bad, he probably would be gone. And they've kind of changed it a bit now. Nick Nurse, obviously a great coach, one of the greatest coaches in the NBA right now. But I think what hurt them is they were just getting absolutely nothing from the center position. Aaron Baines, I had high expectations for. If I had low expectations, he still wouldn't have met them. He's been pretty trash for the Raptors so far. But ever since a couple weeks ago, Chris Boucher is getting more minutes. OG Anunoby is getting more minutes. Stanley Johnson has found his way into a significant rotation role. And they're starting to play better defense. They're starting to get something from the center position. And I think by the end of the year, they'll probably be an above 500, low 6-7 seed playoff team.
And, flipping to the other side of things, surprise good team. Who do you got? We'll see if
The
we have
Cavs,
the same.
which is interesting because the Cavs have a worse point differential than the Raptors, and they're only a couple games better. But I do like what the Cavs are doing. I loved them getting Jared Allen. They have like 1,000 bigs right now and are somehow still one of the worst rebounding teams in the league. So you kind of would expect that to get better. I don't know how you can be the 8th rebounding team starting Andre Drummond and having like JaVale McGee as your 17th guy off the bench. I kind of like what they're doing. I like their backcourt. They're a top 10 defensive team. I think they'll probably, if I was to pick an 8 seed right now, I think I would choose the Cavs. And I think they'll be a fun 8 seed because they got the good backcourt and the good bigs if they don't trade Kevin Love, if they don't trade Larry Nance, if they don't trade Andre Drummond. A lot of question marks, but I like what they're doing right now.
I got the Warriors. A Steph Curry-led team. Klay Thompson, as we know, out with the season-ending injury. They're in 8th right now in the West in that last playoff spot. Curry literally averaging 28.4 points a game. It seems like every night you get on Twitter and it's like Steph Curry did it again. Steph Curry did it again. What can't this guy do? Literally putting the team on his back. And you look at the West as far as teams go. You have you have both LA teams, the Lakers and the Clippers, with LeBron. And you just think of the stars in the West: LeBron, AD, Kawhi, Paul George, Jokic, Murray, Lillard. The list goes on. And Steph Curry still, keeping the Warriors relevant and in the playoff spot. I think it's interesting. It's easier for a guard to keep, his team in it especially him, because he's the point guard. So he gets the ball on every possession. He can only play so many minutes, he can only do so much, but the Warriors still with a 9-8 record right now, above 500, Steph Curry led. We'll see if he can keep it up though. And sneak them into the playoffs. Anything can happen in the playoffs. But right now, that's my surprise good team. Again, no surprise of what Steph Curry's doing. That's not a surprise at all. I'm just saying, as the team-wise goes, they're above 500 and in the playoffs right now.
It's funny. This feels a lot like one of those 10 years ago Warriors teams where it's kind of Steph and the boys. and they'll go as far as Steph takes them. And now Steph's 10 years older. And this team's still going as far as Steph will take them.
Yep. So that wraps up the NBA segment here. We're going to close out. Mitch, any final thoughts, words that you have, discussions, statements?
I think we're going to preview the Super Bowl next week. But if I was to give a lock of the week, probably the century, red Gatorade's got to be obvious, right? It's got to be the easiest bet ever. The Buccaneers versus the Chiefs. I don't care what the odds are. I'm betting on red Gatorade.
Yeah, that's, easy to bet.
Also tails as well for the coin toss.
Well, yeah, tails never fail. I'd agree with you there. Tom Brady 6-3 in Super Bowl appearances. I saw a stat that Juan sent in our group chat the other day. Since Tom Brady was drafted by the Patriots, the Jets have won 100 and some games out of like 300 some. And Brady has won 6 out of the 9 Super Bowls that he's been in. And so ultimately, Tom Brady has a greater chance of winning the Super Bowl than the New York Jets do winning a football game.
Yeah, I saw that. It's funny.
Which, a very interesting statistic to go about it. I kind of laughed. But that's my closing statement. I'll let you know who my Super Bowl pick is next week. I'll save it until then. I
Got to
think
crunch the numbers, figure it out.
yeah, Mitch probably knows which direction I'm heading in. But
I don't know.
speaking of next week, we have a Super Bowl special for you guys next week, where we're just going to strictly talk about the Super Bowl coming up in 2 weeks in Tampa Bay. Some possible guest speakers that we could have for you guys. We'll let you know. We'll update you on that. Hopefully, we can get them on the show, make it more interesting to get some inside perspectives. But that's the direction we're going to head in next week. A Super Bowl special for you guys next week to preview the Super Bowl in Tampa Bay between the Bucs and the Chiefs. But for now, that's the end of this edition of the Sin Bin podcast. Again, go check out the Sports Fluent Network on sportsfluent.com. I'm Joe Trentley from Harrisburg, PA. He's Mitch Bannon from Toronto, Ontario. And we will see you guys next week on the Sin Bin.